makes your noose like an old man. He's got you thinking about your death and you are frightened.
Hi to everyone, I'm Ada from PoisonedRock, and today we have the honor to have with us Jonas from At the Gates. Hi Jonas.
Hello.
How are you, first of all?
How I am? I'm good. Yeah.
Nice to hear. So, I wanted to go straight to the first questions. If, of course, everyone knows At the Gates and as a huge band, but I wanted to ask you to introduce not the band, speaking about the band, but the current lineup of the band.
The current lineup is it's the same as has been since 93 when Martin joined, except me instead of Anders. So it's Thomas, Adrian, Jonas, Martin, and me. So
okay. So and yes, and you say that of course you came after Anders, and how was for you? We can say being at the place of Anders, there was like one of the founder member of the band.
Yeah, well, Anders is, I mean, he's always been hugely important to the band and with his songwriting and all that, you know. And Anders is a good friend also since many years. So it's, I mean, it's of course it's like filling someone else's shoes in a band going for so many years. It's always kind of, it's not difficult, but it's, you know, you always get judged in a different way, you know.
Yeah, because you're like the new guitarist, the new guy, and you have a huge name behind your back, and it's something like I don't know, like maybe uncomfortable sometimes.
Yeah, well, it has. I mean, the band has, the rest of the guys they've always made me feel very comfortable joining.
That's amazing. That's amazing. This show.
We've been friends so many years, and
that's great.
And that's kind of the reason why they wanted me to join is because of that, because they wanted someone they already knew and all that, because it's more comfortable for them also, you know.
Because there is also feelings, a connection. Yeah.
And I think it's made also people kind of like accept me a bit more because they know I'm background from that. So
yeah, they know you from before. You think as guitarists, as musicians, you brought new sound or new influences in the band, especially in the last albums?
My guitar playing is, I mean, it's different from Anders in some ways, but I mean, if you talk about, because I do all the lead guitar work, and me and Anders' lead style is pretty much similar, you know. It's more melodic and mellow. It's not a shreddy guitar thing, you know. So that thing we had in common. But I mean, Anders is more like a thrash guitar player, which I am not, you know. So I mean, I had to learn, like, become a better thrash player. Doing some certain guitar stuff, I really had to practice more, you know. So.
You did it. I mean, the last album is great, so you did it perfectly. And can you tell us about how you joined the band? I mean, you joined the band, but how it happens? I mean,
well, like the year before Anders left the band, like after they did the last show for the At War reality tour, me, Thomas, and Adrian had talked like loosely for a while about like forming a band, doing something together, you know, making music.
Sure.
So us three decided that we wanted to start a new band on the side, you know, called The Lurking Fear. So it was us three, and then we had Andreas and Fred from the Skit System join us. And the whole thing about that band is just 5 friends wanting to make music together. And since we already had 2 of the guys from At the Gates in the band, I already knew the situation, but Anders hadn't really decided if he wanted to go on or not, you know. So and then, like 6 or 7 months later, like I think it was in like February, March of 2017, Thomas called me and said that Anders decided to leave the band, and they've discussed who they wanted to like try out, and he asked if I wanted to try. Yeah. Well, not join right away. It's just he just you can take a few days to think about it, and I was like, what's there to think about, you know?
Yeah, sure.
Of course, I want to try it out, you know. So
and
like they gave me like 3 songs for me to learn, and then we had like.
Can I ask which song, if you remember?
So I think it was Cold, Blinded by Fear, and I think it was one song from At War with Reality. I don't remember which one it was.
It's just for my own curiosity. Yeah.
And I learned those 3, and they had like an informal. So I think it was Cold. But then they like officially asked me to join the band. So.
And how was the first practicing with the band? The early days with them.
I mean, I was so focused because just had to like nail the songs, you know. So
yeah,
it worked out fine. I think we played through the songs like 2 times or something, and
then it was done. That's amazing.
Then we just went in and had lunch, and they kind of had a meeting for like 5 minutes, and then they came out and asked me if I.
Yeah, it was like.
At the same time, I was like in the kitchen having coffee with Tyrant from Niflheim, because he's always at Jonas' house. So.
Yeah, it's like he's something that was meant to be.
Keeping me company. So.
Yes, and I mean, almost 2 years ago was released your first work with At the Gates. Do you think there are some difference between these last works and from the previous albums of the Gates?
I mean, I think the last album, To Drink from the Night itself, is a lot darker than like the earlier stuff, and it's not as like fast and straightforward that Slaughter of the Soul is, which is more like direct and I mean, dare I say it, more commercial, you know. But at the same time, it's, you still hear it's the same band. The whole core of it is still there, but it's just
the core, yeah, sure,
a bit heavier and more progressive and stuff like that.
Yeah, like there is more technique behind all of that.
I think the songs are a bit more, since Jonas wrote all the music, like before. I mean, Anders didn't write all of it. Jonas wrote a lot or 2, and it was more Anders' stamp to it. And I think Jonas wanted a kind of a different way to do it, you know. So that's, I think, this biggest like difference is that kind of style is kind of different on that album. So.
Okay, so this question is like we can just split it into different questions. Because one is, which is your favorite album about the Gates, personally, and the other one is, in your opinion, which is the album that incarnate better the sound of a band. So one is one you like, and one is like an objective way. Well, it could be the sound of the band.
Actually, I had to answer both questions with the same album. Actually, because my favorite and the album I think really like embodies everything about the Gates is At War with Reality, because it's kind of like, I mean, it must, I mean, doing like a comeback album and having it come out like so many years after Slaughter of the Soul, that was such a huge album.
Yes, I mean, it was like a masterpiece.
Really themselves to do, like they wanted to like do a great follow-up, but not like copy the Soul, which I think it doesn't do at all, you know. It's a completely different thing, that album. But there's just something about that record that I love. It's my favorite album of At the Gates.
Yeah.
I mean, I love the last album. I love all the records, but that one is just a bit special.
In particular, yeah. And we can say, I mean, we must say that At the Gates are like the father of that melodic death metal. In your opinion, which are the band that inspires most this kind of genre?
I mean, inspired. I've never really, actually, to be honest, been into the melodic kind of. I mean, I always liked At the Gates. I like Dissection, and that's much it. I think, Otherwise, I was always more into like Autopsy and Bolt Thrower and Entombed and stuff like that. So what I call the meat and potatoes death metal.
Well, how meat and potato? Can you explain this?
It's more organic. It's more like it's simpler. It's heavier. It's more punkish and So I mean the melodic stuff. I mean, it comes from a lot of like thrash and stuff like.
Yes, in fact, the following question is that you believe that thrash metal and death metal have a contribution to this sound of At the Gates. So At the Gates has a huge thrash influences as well.
I mean, I think it's in its core, it's death metal, like but there's always these nuances, which I think comes from thrash metal, but also, as I said, a lot of stuff comes from like Merciful Fate and stuff like that.
Yeah, sure. But do you think that this is more, like I say, a question that would be understood by the guitarist because it's more technical? Your way of composing and composing music, you think is different from others?
Well, I don't compose any music for At the Gates. I haven't so far.
I mean, for you, as you guitarist, not in At the Gates. I mean, speaking like guitarist, solo guitarist.
I mean, the music I make in other bands.
Yes.
I kind of, I have a different approach. And I mean, me and Jonas, and I mean, also Andres to an extent, have kind of the same influences, but we kind of use it in a different way. There's all of us listen to a lot of like progressive rock, like old stuff like King Crimson and Yes and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Which has always been like a part of At the Gates, but But when I do it, I think I'm a bit more obvious when I do it.
Yeah. So. And speaking about the last album that has been released, what has changed in the songwriting? And could you tell something about the last album? What about the composing, the topic of the lyrics, the artwork?
Well, I mean, the whole record was already written when I joined the band, and Jonas did all the music. I mean, and Thomas is always a big part of the arrangement and stuff of the music. And Jonas he's very influenced by classical music and a lot of prog, and I mean, it's very few really like death metal bands that influences him, I think, when he makes music. And the lyrics are I mean, I can't speak for them really, because I mean it's always Tompa's thing, and
of course.
He's always very influenced by different kinds of literature, and I know that one was based on a book, just the same as what reality was, and I think it was a Russian book. I think
Russian book. Yeah. And I know also that you have other projects apart of At the Gates. I mean, side projects.
You mean Lurking Fear or all of
them? Your other bands.
Yeah, well, I don't consider any of them like a side project, because most of those bands I was in before I joined At the Gates. So they're always been bands, and the longest running band I have is Bones of Hades, which has been around for like 12 years, being like more like serious about it. And we've done 4 albums and a shitload of like 7 inches and stuff. And that band has always been a bit more punkish, and it's also like 4 really good friends in that band,
And I mean, and right now you are playing only in At the Gates, like.
I'm playing all bands now, but I mean, it's all kind. I mean, At the Gates is the band that tours the most.
Yeah.
All of the other bands doesn't really tour that much. Yeah. So I mean, but I was in right up until like a year and a half ago. I was in a British band called Cripple Black Phoenix. which is more like progressive, like
Progress.
psychedelic kind of thing. It's really hard
Yes.
to know what that band does sound like, because it
Yes.
changes a lot all the time. And I toured pretty much with that band too, but kind of came to a point where I just couldn't continue playing in that band because of the case, So, and I mean, God Macabre is like my oldest band. I mean, we formed that band back in 89, 90. And then we did one album in 91, and then we broke up, and then we started doing shows again in 2013, and we're still making shows. We're never gonna do a second album.
That's great.
We're just gonna continue doing shows because it's fun. So
And-
we can play if someone wants to book us. So.
That's great, because you are speaking about touring. You have some particular moment in touring with, not only without the Gates, but with all the bands you had and still have that stay with you. Could be a funny moment or whatever. Just a moment that you remember with pleasure.
I mean, there's a lot of those memories, I mean, this with all the bands. I mean, and touring with At the Gates, it's a lot of laughter, because there's a lot of, like, Adrian has the weirdest, funniest sense of humor, and he's just a funny guy who makes you laugh, like, probably like
All the time.
times a day, because and well, everything is just about fun, and also the crew we have is like fun people, so it's nice to be around that all the time,
And now I want to just focus on your musical influences. First of all, of course, your musical influences as guitarist.
Well, you mean guitar players alike? Or?
Yeah, guitar. You're a guitar player, so we spoke about guitarists.
I mean, there's a lot of guitar players that I like, and like there's a few that I like really admire, and those are like Michael Denner, who played with Merciful Fate and King Diamond, and also Andy LaRocque, who plays with King Diamond. He's probably the only like shredder guitar player that I really like.
Yeah.
And then it's like David Gilmour and a guy called Andy Latimer played in Camel.
Camel, huge band, Lady Fantasy. I love them. Them.
And I mean, there's a lot of guitar players like that. Robin Trower and Michael Schenker.
Yeah. Michael Schenker
lot
as
of
well.
big old guys. So this not, and some of my favorite like new guitar players that come, like, but they're still not new. They've been around forever.
Yeah.
But it's a guy called Nels Klein, Wilco.
Wilco, yeah.
Yeah.
I know him.
And he's been doing a lot of like plays a lot of jazz and weird shit. But he's just an amazing guitar player, and also a Swedish guy called Reine Fiske, who plays with Dungen, and he plays with shitloads of bands all the time. He plays a lot with Motorpsycho and.
I know them as well. Yeah.
First time I heard it, he used to be in a band called Landberg. Came out in like early '90s in Sweden.
Yeah.
Like 3 albums and like really like rootsy, progressive stuff and.
Yes. And if you have, like I was saying before we started the interview, that 5 albums or musicians or songs that from your childhood till today formed you as a human being?
Well, I mean, it started with Kiss, really. I mean, I heard them for the first time in, like, I think it was in '76 when I was 3 years old. I have an older brother, so he was like playing Destroyer in his room, and I was like, what is this, and then he was listening to a lot of like Thin Lizzy and Rainbow and
and I love them.
And then it kind of progressed to like Iron Maiden, Judas Priest, and like Venom came out, and I was like, oh, what is this, and then it just became Metallica and Slayer and Celtic Frost, Voivod, and then, I mean, at the same time, like in the mid '80s, I was into a lot of like American hardcore stuff, like Dead Kennedys and Black Flag and like Detroits and like bands like that, Minor Threat and like all that. And also a lot of like love bands like The Cure and Sisters of Mercy and Fields of the Nephilim and Dynasty and Sonic Youth and stuff like that. So it's you guys
just go from hard rock to
new
wave
I love music, you know. So it's
Yes, of
to be
course.
honest, I don't listen that much to metal, you know. So
Yeah.
but really for the past 25 years or something.
I
So
think it's
I
something
still
more
do,
coming
but
from for the guitarist, the guitar player that I met in my life. They are like more open-minded, maybe because they're looking for a particular sound in the way of playing.
excuse me.
I just noticed that they are more open-minded than a simple listener or fans of music. They are more open-minded. It's something that I noticed just
Yeah.
in all these years.
I've,
And but
I've listened to a lot of actually Italian prog, you know.
really, which
I
what
mean,
did you listen?
it's like from the 70s, there's shitloads of bands, you know, like Il Balletto di Bronzo, Celeste, Mr.
PFM,
Rosenbach, PFM,
good.
Banco,
PFM is a
and
and
there's a lot
and
of pure bands.
I
You know.
advise a band called Orme.
Yeah, Le Orme, yeah.
Yeah, and another one that is a little bit tough as a pronunciation in Italian, Banco del Mutuo Soccorso.
Secondo, yeah.
Yeah, you know them. They are amazing. Yeah, my dad
Yeah.
passed me all this music.
Yeah.
Yeah, they are
Band,
amazing.
Raccomandata ricevuta ritorno, and I mean,
Yeah.
there's so many cool bands from Italy back then.
Yes.
In,
They made the history. They made the history because in the 70s in Italy there wasn't so much hard rock. We
Yeah.
had only prog, this huge prog music, prog band. So all the teenagers were like prog teenagers. We can
yeah,
say.
which is so
Yeah.
cool. You know, I mean,
Yes,
one
yes,
of
a
my
lot.
favorite bands is Goblin, and
Amazing as well.
I've
And
got to know them now actually because we played. I know it was Netherlands Death Fest actually. We played at the same night,
that's
and I
amazing.
started talking to Claudio, and he just told me all these stories from the 70s, and I was like a little kid, you know, like
That's
hearing all
amazing.
these bands and all
Yes.
these friends from back then. And then we ended up actually playing the same night in I think it was Salt Lake City when
Yeah.
Gates was touring the US with Behemoth. And Goblin played the same night at a different venue when they were doing like the whole of Suspiria, like playing the soundtrack live to the movie.
Yeah.
Some of us managed actually to get to that show and like having lunch with them like earlier that day.
Yeah, Goblin are incredible, amazing. So we stayed a little bit in the 70s, but if we have to come back nowadays, what do you think about the nowadays musical? I don't want to say death metal or thrash metal, like musical scene. I mean, so the band that are coming or now. I mean, the new bands nowadays.
I mean, are you talking about new metal bands or new bands?
I think we spoke a little bit like hard rock, prog metal, prog rock. I think in general it's better just not stay focused on metal.
Not that many like metal bands that really interest me, and I mean the bands I listen to the most now is like bands that are active now is my absolute favorite band is Motorcycle from Norway.
Motorcycle, they are great. They are really great. Yeah.
I feel like into Opeth now. I mean,
Opeth,
it
yes,
took
well.
a really long time before it wasn't until like I heard like what's it called, Watershed, like a couple of years actually, like 2-3 years after it came out, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, this is actually pretty good.
Yeah.
Like, they're becoming. I mean, the last album is fucking masterpiece.
Yes,
So,
and also because if you listen to all these type of different genre of music, it's important because you brings really different influences to a death metal band, and it makes you more interesting because you have some new influences.
Yeah.
And what about the future project about the Gates? Coming back to at the Gates, there is some new albums on the.
What record the new album in a couple of weeks actually.
Oh, really? What can you tell about that?
Well, it's kind of progressing even more from the last album. It's going to be different than that one too. So, but it's still like it's at the Gates, But
yes,
it's evolving even more, So it's all of us are kind of on the same page with why should we do the same record over and over again, So.
No. It's like maintaining the core, but evolving the sound.
It's going to be an interesting album to record. Actually, I think so.
And I mean, of course, we know that there is COVID right now. But do you have some gigs planned for 2021, 2022. I don't know for them.
We have more or less, I think like 90% of all the festivals we were supposed to do this year, we're gonna do next year instead.
Yes.
I mean, the album's gonna be out in May, and hopefully, if everything is kind of back to normal, we'll do some touring.
We really hope, really hope, because we had enough.
Weird year, you know. So
yeah. So okay, we are in the ending. Just if you want to send a message to At the Gates fans, your fans, and our followers, it would be great. And we are done.
Well, what can I say? I hope you all look forward to our next album, which will be released in May next year, I think. So probably the first songs that you can hear will probably be out in like March, I think, February or March. So I hope people will like the album, because we do.
For sure. So thank you so much, Jonas, and I for sure we will see in some festival, because I am like a gypsy festival. I will be in every festival in Europe, so for sure we will meet in some festival.
Yeah, probably.
I will hope so. So thank you so much, and see you next year then.
Yeah.
Have a good rest of the day, and thank you again for your time. Bye.
Bye.
Jonas.
To the preacher during the sermon, he's a saint to the fools of the old land, but we can see straight through the tricks that he is turning. He'll speak, but you gotta believe there's only